pretext of getting a better life by gifts given to them or families being bribed into actually getting some kind of financial reward. So these are causes that have, these are the root causes that have such a problem in respect of teenage pregnancy. Also inclusive of other issues. You know, there are certain provinces where we find, also I'm moving away from the eastern, that parents, due to poverty, they will intentionally get their children pregnant by people they know, also maybe just to get some kind of financial reward. But added to that, parents are also now going to the level.
There's a special kind of magic in the air.
And this then assists them, I'm using the word assist in a very relative form, to assist them then to access the disability grant, which is a higher level of income than actually getting the child support grant. So these are the kind of dynamics that families are experiencing, children are experiencing. They are being used by adults to actually engage in these activities, Kathy.
Kian, I mean, yes? I'm speechless. Did you say that you have parents that are deliberately giving their pregnant children substance so that they can engineer effectively the outcomes of their child to guarantee some kind of grant if the child is born with a disability? Is that what you have seen? I mean, seen it on a scale enough for you to say that it's one of the problems that you're having to deal with?
Yes, Kathy. This is a very, very serious problem. As I indicate, it's not in all provinces, but remember, when this kind of activity gets to other provinces, people will this behavior and continue with it. There are pockets in certain provinces where parents are intentionally, because of poverty, low levels of education, children also being naive in certain situations, they allow the children to get pregnant. And then further to that, in order to access the state grant at a higher level, remember the disability grant is much higher than the child support grant, then they will introduce substances to the children so that when the child is born, maybe it's fetal alcohol syndrome or whatever it is, the child is born with a disability. So this is a serious, serious problem. It's not all over the country, but there are certain pockets that these dynamics are actually rearing their head.
So in which provinces would you say that you're seeing behavior like that?
It's in and Limpopo right now. So these are things that, as I said, are very, very serious. The dynamics of our provinces are also very critical and very difficult sometimes to address. Because parents also, remember when you have access to the child as a state, sometimes you have to via the parents in order to have access to the child. And then you don't get that kind of direct access to the child. Remember, some of these children don't even attend school. They would rather be at home and be pregnant. So it also relates to a high school dropout. So the dynamics are emerging in different forms. So coming back to the issue of teenage pregnancy, I think maybe you're going to raise a question to me at a later point. I think it's important that we have a collaboration with government departments, which will do excellent collaboration. But now we need to move a step further, where the SAPS now needs to be charges against the perpetrators who have impregnated these children. So I think we need to move in that direction, because we cannot have a society of children having children. If a child is 10 years old and has a child at that age, granny because her child will now become pregnant at the age of 10. So it's a vicious cycle that we need to stop and eradicate the issue of teenage pregnancy.
Mfundo, the word poverty has come up a lot in this conversation, and perhaps it's a good place for us to go back to that all of these issues are interconnected. So where you see a high rate of teenage pregnancy, you're then also highly likely to have it accompanied by all of these other issues.
Yeah. So I think it's important, Kathy, to first of all, just to say the stories that are being told. I'm having a physical reaction to just the stuff that our children have to go to. But I want to just highlight that when we are talking about poverty in South Africa, you've had me talk about this before, Kathy, that it is really important to understand that it is poverty that is combined with a deeply, deeply broken and wounded society. And when we worked in these communities, the children told us that things have actually gotten worse. So the problem has gotten worse after COVID-19 because a lot of parents have lost their jobs. So we've had children who told us that they worry about food at home. So when they go outside and there's this older male that try to lure them and promise them money, some of them, the fact that they can bring food at home makes them to also be involved in these relationships. Some of the children talked about how they constantly worry about their parents, so the high levels of GBV. For example, one participant that we had said to us, I am constantly worried about my mom's safety due to GBV. And so as a result of that just level of anxiety and constantly worrying, it is so easy, Kathy, when children are that worried to pull them in, give them alcohol, tell them that it will make them feel better. The other problem that we've also had, Kathy, is this sense. One young person said that I grew up not being given sex education. So when I became a young boy and I'm with my friends, they tell me that if I give a girl alcohol, then I own that person. So again, just that lack of education that is available, because most of the parents are spending their time. You can imagine if you're living in poverty, you are so preoccupied with what are the children going to need to eat next. Is the food at home? You don't even have time to sit down and talk to your children about issues of sexuality. It actually seems like it is a lot. The other final issue, Kathy, around issues of poverty and the trauma of our society is this deep-seated issue around our own worth, So our young people just learning that I am worthy, I am enough as a young woman. I don't need a man to define me or money to define me. But when you live in poverty, the desperation to get out, and in South Africa, it's not just getting out of poverty, it's getting out of this deep-seated trauma that comes to poverty, means that our children even put themselves at risk.
So you're having a situation where children then are forced to become providers, or they see themselves then as providers for their families, as needing to be part of the solution to the problem.
Yeah. So on the other hand, you have these young people who are really worried about their family. They can see the situation at home, and of course there's this lie that they get told that because you are rich, you can be able to get access. So we have those problems at home, and then also we have this challenge of this broken society. Cape and in KZN, when we were doing our work. And what usually happens when there is poverty is that the perpetrators then come to the family and say, please don't take us to the police. Can we negotiate what we can do? We're going to pay you something or damages to this child. And again, that helps the family to alleviate the poverty that they have. So there is levels of complexity that combines the deep-seated pain and brokenness and wounding, and also the poverty that comes to it with parents who themselves are still very, very broken, baby. I always say that the way we treat our children is a direct proportionality to the relationship that we have with the inner child in us. There's a lot of us who now have children who never dealt with their own social violence, their own abuse. So how do you even protect your child and deal with your child if you actually haven't done this?
Sure. So much for us to think about already. Mfundo Kami is the CEO of the Center for Mental Wellness and Leadership, Giandori, and Deputy Director, Child Protection at the Department of Social Development. Still so much for us to unpack in this conversation. We'll continue after the latest headlines. Human rights activist and Citizens Forum spokesperson Dennis Bloom says Chief Justice Mandisa should continue to cement the independence of the judiciary. He also wants the new Chief Justice to ensure the Zondo State Capture Commission report is fully implemented. The South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesija Hanyago says workers will continue to feel the inflation pressure. Looking to launch retirement system for
Yeah, necessary.
rather than to serve. And the Nelson has restored power supply to 14 areas that have been without electricity for almost 10 days. Details on these and other stories.
We fear 1,000
Now,
kilometers.
taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 17.89 to the dollar, 23.51 to the pound, and 19.81 to the euro. Markets in Asia were mainly lower and closing well. The JSE is right across the board in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are weaker this hour. Gold is trading at $2,499, platinum $928 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is $66.83 a barrel.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed MSP and registered credit provider.
Only the final whistle in the real football kings of East Africa. They must
Yeah, into it,
the East African derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. The beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips, SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The talking point with Kathy Mosazana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the talking point, focusing on teen pregnancies and trying to understand what is driving the high rate of teenage pregnancies that we see in the country. Our experts, of course, have
sexuality. And this also, some families would request children to become pregnant so that they could increase the numbers in their household. And we don't know what's the reason for that, because this maybe it's for actually increasing the economic in terms of the monies that they would receive, but it's not something that we can clearly state that that's a factor that family would want. We need to also look at the cultural factors associated with teenage pregnancy. You know, the expression of masculinity and femininity, cultural practices, traditions and beliefs, as well as the procreation online,
kula makhasi
that they will then benefit
Look at
by
Magic
engaging in sexual activity.
leti lokhu ngithe ngekutshala
Last year, the Department
Uyifile,
Education and
izolo,
Awareness
izolo,
Program in the Mpumalanga area
La makhasi
in
ayethe khona.
Mpumalanga. And it was really
Kaza vele
very
ayibulala
disturbing
inkomo
to
noma
find
angithi
that the child
bengasahlali
that go
nezindlu
across the border
so ishilde
is
neshilde ayikho
particular
hlala yodwa
community, and the children will engage in sexual activities with these truck drivers. And on return,
mani walimala nje
truck
so
driver will just bring back a
Mfonele,
ticket
izolo.
to give to that
Mfonele,
family
izolo.
so that they would have a meal. So as I say, it's really scary.
hayi
It's not-
ngizamile
I don't know if
ngijovile
it's
ngayenza konke
alarmist, but probably these
Sengile
are
ukudla.
things what parents are allowing their children to actually engage in because of poverty. So Kathy, it is very, very serious, and I think more parenting programs need to be in place to understand their roles and responsibilities in the care and protection of children.
So, what does that tell us, Mfundo, about what is maybe missing from social protection net? Yes, we've got the child grant, we've got the disability grant, we've got the old age grant, but it does sound like there's something that is missing, which is why then you have this gap or this vacuum that is being created, where out of the sheer need, the sheer desperation of needing to eat, there are extreme measures that are being entered into.
Yeah, so Kathy, I mean, as I always say, that in our society, when we try to deal with social ills, we tend to focus a lot on, what I call the hardware of these social issues, such as policies, bringing in money, maybe increasing social workers. But I think we need to also focus on the software of these issues. So when we are talking about the family, what is the mental state of these parents and the way in which they themselves has grown up? What was the disruption? So in places like Lusiki City and a lot of the communities in the Eastern Cape that have high levels of teenage pregnancy, it is communities where parents tend to move from the villages and they go to the towns to come and work and they leave the children. So there's something about the architecture of our economy that actually makes it difficult for the parents to be able to work and get the income and still be present for their children. So how do we begin to also address that deep-seated psyche that drives the economy? How do we make parents to also be aware?
I want to play this voice note, and I think it's a question to you on the issue of mental health that you've raised.
Morning, Kathy. This is Zanele in Devon. Your guest kick off by mentioning the mental health, what they've discovered on the field there when they were doing their research. Could she explain that mental health? Because if some of us, like me, if you're talking about the mental health, we're just thinking of a person who is the person who is hitting people, or the person who is mentally disturbed. So if she is talking about the mental health, in which way? Because there's some other ways that we might not aware of. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that question, Zanele. Nomfundo?
Oh, such an important question, Zanele. Thank you. So when we are talking about the psyche of our society, there's a number of things that we are talking about. For example, in the research that we did, our children told us that they've had 59% of them said they've had increased stress and anxiety. So stress and anxiety means that you are constantly worried, you can't relax. And if you cannot relax, Zanele, it means that the part of your brain that you need to be a present parent, that teaches your child, that guides them, gets deactivated, right? Because you are constant. We don't, in a society, we haven't taught ourselves skills for being able to sufficiently manage anxiety and overwhelm. We've had 11% of the children we work with told us that they either attempted suicide or they've got suicidality. So you've got people who feel like they would rather live life. And the other thing is the high use of alcohol for us is usually an indication of people trying to deal with depression. So when we talk about mental health, I think to summarize it is that for us to be effective as parents, as social workers, as citizens of this country, we need to have an activated cerebral cortex. So that is the part of the brain that makes us human. But when we go through stress, through grief, through anxiety, through poverty, then we store that pain in another part of the brain that we call a limbic system. And that part of the brain is the one that results in more brokenness. So we have this lie in a society where we say, I was about strong, you can't deal with it. But psychology is actually teaching us that if we keep on storing these painful things, they end up impacting how we parent. You know, kids, I was working with young women during August month. One of them was in tears and she said, I grew up a kaya with violence. I saw my dad being violent. Before Nizabule session, I beat my daughter. And I was close to killing her because she reminded me of my own trauma. So those are the kinds of things that we are talking about.
Get a boyfriend with a job. And, you know, this is happening amongst young children in high school. And the impact of that, of course, it becomes what we discuss today. Anonymous, you're calling us from the Eastern Cape. Good morning. Yeah, please.
About the talking about mental health clinic. So, you know, the how clinic think you will never stop getting friends into that because we are mentally disturbed or what. No, the past experiences clean up. I get that for a long time. I get that for a long time. Who's my child? Up until the 16th of yes. Right, we are catching the suicide. But we are fortunately to be able to. But now, whenever I was hospitalized, the time psychologist decided that I should be taken into a mental health clinic. The moment I heard that name, after I told them, no, I'm not made. Why now? Why are you taking me because I'm not made? They need to explain to me to know it's not that you are made, but we are trying to assist you with the problems that you have. So now I'm thinking of these young kids who have people now experiences, bad experiences with no one to talk to. Yes, I think awareness is needed.
And I guess, you know, Anonymous is that people are living with so much pressure on a day-to-day basis that it seems we don't have the tools of how to deal with that pressure, how to deal with feeling overwhelmed, feeling that we just cannot do what we need to get done. There are so many other issues that we need to fix alongside it in order to deal with the high rate of teen pregnancies. Thank you both for your insight. Kiamdu Arika, Deputy Director, Child Protection at the Department of Social Development, and Nomfundo Muhabi, who is the CEO of the Center for Mental Wellness and Leadership. So, yeah, absolutely so much for us to think about. The next time you hear those teenage pregnancy numbers, think about this conversation. It's time for your latest news update.
The top stories at 11 o'clock, the calls for the Chief Justice to cement the judiciary's independence, and the Reserve Bank Governor weighs in on the two-pot system. A very good morning to you. The two-pot system official is from today. Should continue to support the judiciary. It also wants a new Chief Justice to ensure state capture implemented. Spokesperson Dennis Bloom, a former chair of Parliament's Correctional Services Committee, African corporations, previously known as Bosasa. His testimony, which revealed alleged rampant corruption and bribery at correctional services. Bloom elaborates.
Citizens Forum, hoping we give justice and necessary pressure on President Ramaphosa and Parliament that all those who refuse to commission report praise the full might of the law. We wish Chief Justice Maya the best of luck.
Reserve Bank Governor Lesseja Haida says the inflation pressure if the user withdraws from the two-part retirement system who drowned yesterday in the Tugela River near Mandeni on the north of Durban continues. It's alleged that the man experienced difficulties while attempting to cross the river. And to end, Cape Town's Table Mountain Aerial Cableway will reopen today. It was closed for almost 2 months due to repairs. Specialists from Switzerland and South Africa worked on the project and some major upgrades. It's been the longest shutdown of operations in decades. Table Mountain is also in the running for Africa's leading tourist attraction in the World Travel Awards for 2024. Recapping the top story at 11 o'clock, the Activists and Citizens Forum says Chief Justice Mandisa Maya should continue to cement the independence of the judiciary. For SAFM News,
Catch me, Bonan Mateba, on a fresh reality series that showcases the business behind being a business. Get your Excel details on your affiliates and the instructions to bounce reports. That lead escalated raids on the PAC and Google within South Africa. Arrests and rapid trials ensued. Executions of Google members took place. In early April, some Google sympathizers outside King Williamstown attempted to attack a local police station in order to free detainees. Instead, they themselves were arrested. Among many Williamstown police arrested was one of Wiseman's fellow students, Ralph. Under police interrogation, he confessed